All right, our jurors and alternates have returned, and Mr. Durst is present with his lawyers. Mr. Lewin and his colleagues are present for the people. You may resume the cross-examination.
Mr. Durst, I want to talk about your detention and arrest at Wegmans in Pennsylvania. Do you recall that incident?
Mic on?
Yes.
Is this mic on?
Oh. I got it this morning. I got it once. Do you recall that, Mr. Durst?
I do.
You would agree that when you were detained, you told the loss prevention officer that you had money in the car to pay for the items you had shoplifted, correct?
I thought I offered them. I thought I offered them the money to pay for the newspaper and the sandwich. I had the money in my pocket.
The testimony in Galveston, Mr. Durst, was that you told the loss prevention officer that you had the money in the car. I want you to assume that you told the loss prevention officer that you had the money in the car. Can you explain why you would have done that when you had more than $500 in your pocket?
I don't recall doing that.
You also told the police officer from the Colonial Police Department that you were in the area visiting your daughter at Lehigh, correct?
Put your mask on.
I don't remember what I told them.
Well, Mr. Durst, you're not disputing that you told the Colonial Police Department officer that you were visiting your daughter at Lehigh, correct?
If he said I told him I was visiting my daughter, I would accept that. I don't remember telling him that. I do remember telling a lady who was stopping me that I had money on me and I'd be happy to pay for what I had stolen.
The Colonial Police officer, you told him that you had your ID in the glove compartment of your car, is that correct?
That is correct.
And Mr. Durst, you did not have any ID in your glove compartment at all, correct?
It was not in the glove compartment. It was in one of the suitcases in the car.
Right, but you told him specifically, my ID is in the glove compartment, correct?
I think Morris's Medicare card was in the glove compartment. I told him I had ID in the glove compartment. And I think I also told him I had ID in my suitcase.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that in the stipulated testimony from the officer from the Colonial Police Department, Officer Benner, that his testimony was that you told him that you had ID in the glove compartment? Is that correct?
I don't deny that.
And Mr. Durst, isn't it true that in fact what you had in the glove compartment was this? Please put up the image of the glove compartment. I have it as MVC 046S.
Thank you. For the trial, it's People's 240. Please step.
People's 240.
Do you see any ID in that glove box, Mr. Durst?
I'm sorry, Mr. DeGuerin?
Objection, repetition.
Repetitious?
I think
Overruled.
that's what that was.
Pardon me?
352. This has been done before.
Overruled.
Do you see any ID in that glove box, Mr.
I
Durst?
think that white envelope with the red stripe down it was where Morris Black's Medicare card was and where the rental agreement for the car was.
Well, Mr. Durst, you would agree that Morris Black's driver's license, the ID that you were using, was in the trunk of the car in a completely different area, correct?
If that's where they were, that's where they were.
You agree, Mr.
I
Durst?
did not know that.
You agree, Mr. Durst, that what you did have in the glove box was a fully loaded .38, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Durst, you previously said that you had this gun because you were thinking about killing yourself. Is that correct?
Correct.
How many rounds does it take for someone to kill themselves?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No, I don't know.
Are you aware, Mr. Durst, of people killing themselves by firing one shot into their head, waiting a while, firing another shot?
I was just reading a novel.
Sustained.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that you had a number of rounds in the car? Go to the next image, please.
This is page 11 from the glove box. This is 39 rounds, hollow point, 38 ammunition.
Did you need 39 rounds of hollow point .38 ammo to kill yourself, Mr. Durst?
No,
So why did you have 40 rounds of ammo minimum in that car?
I assume they came with a gun.
I'm sorry, John. Also, page 30, People's 240, in the trunk, 37 rounds, 38 caliber, hollow point ammunition.
So, Mr. Durst, you've got roughly 80 rounds of ammunition. Is it your testimony that when you bought the gun, it came with 80 rounds of hollow point ammo?
I said I assume that. I don't remember buying the ammo, and I don't know where I got the gun.
Well, Mr. Durst, you would have had to have moved the ammo from wherever it was when you bought the gun to move it through several different rental cars, etc. Would you agree?
How to?
God bless you.
Yes.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that in fact, what you were planning on doing is you were going to get to that car with that unsuspecting officer, draw that firearm from the glove box, and make your escape from Wegmans?
The lady talked about how cooperative I was. The opposite, that I was going to go and stage a shootout with the police.
Well, Mr. Durst, you agree it wouldn't have been much of a shootout because you would have gone to your glove box to get your ID, you would have taken that gun out, and that officer never would have known what hit him until you shot him, correct?
Overruled.
I guess assuming I did not miss,
Assuming you did not miss, are you pretty confident, Mr. Durst, that you can hit somebody with 5 rounds of ammunition in a revolver from a few feet away?
I think this conversation is silly.
Well, Mr. Durst, all right, let's move on to the next issue. In the stipulation, you have stipulated there were no forms of identification contained within the glove compartment. Is that correct? Is that correct?
I'm trying to be, if Morris's Medicare card was not in the glove compartment, then the only form of ID in the glove compartment would have been the rental agreement.
Inside the trunk, in a duffel bag, isn't it true that is where Morris Black's South Carolina driver's license was, and his Medicare insurance card, and almost $37,000, correct? Is that correct?
I'm reading. It says the Medicare card and the driver's license were in the duffel bag.
And that's not in the glove box, correct?
That's not in the glove compartment.
There is a second firearm that's in the car, is that correct?
Yes.
Why did you need two firearms to kill
Well,
yourself?
I was going to shoot myself from both sides of the head at the same time.
Is that honestly your testimony right now?
Yes.
I just want to make sure you're not joking, you're being serious. That wasn't a joke or sarcasm.
Oh, it is a joke. I just told you that I think this is silly.
Well, I'm asking Mr. Durst, you have said that you had that gun because you wanted to kill yourself. You had approximately 80 rounds of ammo and two different guns, both fully loaded. Why do you need two guns and 80 rounds of ammo to commit suicide?
I read a short story in the New Yorker that brought up that a lot of people unsuccessfully attempt to commit suicide by shooting themselves, and frequently, because they are so nervous, the first time they try to shoot themselves, they miss.
I'll move on. Is it fair to say that Gilberta Najami was a nemesis of yours for many years in the fact that she made it very public that she believed you killed Kathy?
Was she a menace?
No, nemesis.
I don't think I know that word.
Well, now we're even. I didn't know tautology. Nemesis, meaning somebody who is kind of your opposition, someone who is leading the fight. So in essence, for many years, would you agree Gilberta was making it public that she believed that you had killed Kathy Durst?
Or I guess yes.
And would you further agree that she was the last person, other than you, to see Kathy Durst before she returned to the to the South Salem house?
I don't know who the last person was that Kathy saw at Gilberti's party.
Well, would you further agree, Mr. Durst, that you were well aware that had you been charged in Kathy's disappearance, Gilberta would certainly have been a witness, correct?
I don't know.
And while you were on the run from Galveston, now that you've been involved in Morris's death and you've dismembered him, you are now thinking things are even worse with respect to Janine Pirro and Westchester, correct? Is that correct?
I'm not sure I agree with that. Somehow it seemed that when it was found out that I had dismembered Morris Black, it kind of turned off Janine Pirro because she thought that I would get convicted in Texas. So there was no reason for her to do anything in New York.
Mr. Durst, didn't she literally fly down to Pennsylvania when you were arrested and then fly down to Galveston to be there for your arraignment?
Yes, and she hooked up with Cody Gonzalez for the next 6 years.
Does that sound like somebody who's not interested in Bob Durst anymore?
She flew down right after I was arrested. Subsequently to me being arrested, she stopped even giving interviews about Robert Durst.
She was given a court order, correct, by your judge in Texas that she was not allowed to speak to the media, correct?
Yes, the judge in Texas told Janine Pirro and Gilberto Najami to shut up.
So you would agree then that Gilberto Najami represented a threat to you with respect to a New York prosecution at the time you were on the run, correct?
I just said, I guess during the 6 weeks that I was on the run, before being arrested in Pennsylvania, it would be correct that Gilberto Najami and Janine Pirro were a threat.
And would you agree that when you were arrested in Pennsylvania, you had Gilberta's addresses, her work and home, in Connecticut inside your car?
I had Gilberto's address and phone number inside my contacts. Her address and phone number were one of 100 contacts that I had.
Didn't you
I
deny,
had been at Gilberto's house with Kathy at least half a dozen times.
didn't you deny, Mr. Durst, previously, when you were asked by Andrew Jarecki on April 18, 2012, about this issue?
Don't remember.
RD 498, April 18, 2012, page 1037, line 21 to page 1038, line 16.
Previously marked equals 277, and the transcript, page 10.
Oh, this is Andrea Potter. As I reported exclusively Wednesday, authorities believe Douglas Durst wasn't the only person on his brother's hit list. When Robert was picked up in Pennsylvania along with 2 guns, cameras, and wads of cash, his trunk contained directions to the Connecticut home of Gilberton and Jamie, a friend of Robert's missing wife, Kathy.
I don't know who concluded that.
Did you have this address of Gilberton and Jamie?
No,
You didn't have. You weren't going to go do something
I
bad.
have no idea where she lived. Where she lived then or where she lives now.
Mr. Durst, that was a straight lie, correct?
I think when I was arrested in Galveston in 2001, I had Gilberto's phone number and address. When I talked to Jarecki in 2012, she had long since moved.
The question, Mr. Durst, is you were asked whether or not when you had been arrested with the 2 guns in Pennsylvania and all the ammo, whether you had Gilberta's address. You responded no. You then also responded you had no idea where she lived, either then or now. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Durst, that both of those statements are lies given your testimony 2 minutes ago?
I think I did have no idea where she lived in 2012. I knew where she lived in 2000.
Isn't it true, Mr. Durst, that in fact you had an address and map of her Connecticut town, Fairfield, inside of the Corsica when you were arrested in Pennsylvania?
I had a map of Connecticut.
You got a map
because
of...
I owned a house in Ridgefield, Connecticut.
Is Ridgefield in Fairfield County?
Ridgefield is in Fairfield County.
And did Gilberta live in Fairfield County?
Newtown, I'm not sure if Newtown is in Fairfield County or not.
Mr. Durst, what possible reason could you have had for having Gilberta's address and a map of the city where she lived in Connecticut, other than that you intended on driving up there and killing her?
I do not think I had a map of the city where she lived. I had the Fairfield County Rand McNally map book.
Did you have her work address in your car, Mr. Durst? Written down?
No. I don't know where she worked.
When you have it,
I thought all she did was sell cocaine.
I'll move on to my next area while you are doing that.
Here, John. People's 46.
Okay? Can you rotate it, please? Mr. Durst, the Hilton Garden Inn in Danbury is one of the places you stayed while you were on the run from Galveston. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so, Mr. Durst, the phone number that is written down there, and the Center for Women Families, and the address, that is Gilberta's phone number and where she worked, correct?
I don't know.
You would agree, Mr. Durst, that this is not simply in an address book. This is on a piece of paper that you had to have filled out while you were on the run, staying at that motel and getting the stationery, correct?
It was on a piece of paper, and there were numerous other pieces of paper in the same book.
Can you explain to me why you would have, I want you to assume for a moment that that is Gilberta's address, where she worked, and her phone number. Can you, Mr. Durst, explain why you would have had that information on hotel stationery nearly 20 years after your wife disappeared?
I'm not sure. The Center for Women and Families is where Gilberti worked.
Let's talk about your brother Douglas for a moment. When you used the letters DD, being named the trustee and taking over the company, you're referring to Douglas, correct?
Referring to Douglas where?
When you use the letters DD, that refers to Douglas. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Have you ever said, as an example, quote, DD is going to say that the whole family is scared to death of you? This is an interview with Andrew Jarecki, 169983. You're referring to Douglas, correct?
I guess so.
And you've also referred to Douglas as BM, correct?
No.
So you're saying, Mr. Durst, I'm going to play for you RD 532. This is a jail call to your wife from December 21st, 2001.
People's 244. Previously mine. 244.
You know, for me to explain or let the jury know what a terrible life I've had, the way to do it is to get BM to testify.
No, it's a disaster.
What?
It's like an incredible mistake.
I can't.
They,
I could get BM and I could get the other people who watched him being, you know, who during those days,
right.
and have them all testify.
Mr. Durst, isn't it correct that you are discussing here getting your brother Douglas to testify regarding the terrible life that you guys had growing up, correct?
I do not recall ever referring to Douglas as BM.
Doesn't BM, Mr. Durst, isn't that one of your little Bobisms, and doesn't that stand for bowel movement? Isn't that why you're calling him BM?
BM is bowel movement. What it has to do with Douglas, I have no idea.
So if BM is not Douglas, Mr. Durst, who else could it be in this context?
I don't know.
Would you agree, Mr. Durst, that since you're talking about growing up together, that the reasonable inference from this, and then talking about how the person mistreated you, is that BM is Douglas? Would you agree?
No.
So can you tell me then, again, if it's not Douglas, who would BM be?
I don't know.
But you agree it definitely stands for bowel movement, correct?
Bowel movement. BM sounds right.
And by the way, does Douglas have a reason to be afraid of you?
He says he does.
And in fact, Mr. Durst, you have said that Douglas is going to say that the whole family is scared to death of you, correct? Correct?
No, not correct.
Isn't it true, Mr. Durst, that during the litigation you were deposed and you were asked if you were aware that your brother had hired a bodyguard because he was fearful of you? Do you recall that?
Yes,
What did you say in response?
and I corrected myself and said I did not know he hired a bodyguard. I was told he hired an investigator.
What did you say in response to being asked if you had knowledge that your brother had hired a bodyguard because he was fearful of you? What did you say in response?
First I said yes, and then I corrected myself and said I did not know that he had hired a bodyguard.
LADA one.
He had said, I read that he hired an investigator.
LADA 167047, please. Isn't it correct, Mr. Durst, that what you said in the response to that as to why your brother had hired a bodyguard was, quote, because he's a pussy, unquote?
It sounds like something I would say. I don't know who all these people are that I'm saying this to.
Have you ever discussed any plans to kill your brother Douglas?
No,
When you were arrested in Pennsylvania, didn't you have a notebook that specifically discussed your brother Douglas and said the following: what DD is doing to me puts me in the same place as what Kathy did to me? Can we show that exhibit as well, please?
no, I remember that.
Do you remember, Mr. Durst?
Yes,
Put on this screen also.
Takes a second.
What did you mean by that, Mr. Durst? DD is Douglas Durst, correct?
I had to fight to run the family business, even though I did not want to run the family business. And I had to fight with Kathy about our divorce, even though we were not getting divorced.
In fact, you had a conversation with your wife regarding this information that had come out about your plans to kill your brother Douglas, correct?
Where did it say that information came out that I had plans to kill Douglas?
RD 530, 121401, jail call from Pennsylvania at 9:39 a.m.
242.
42?
And do you know what I told you the other day about when we were talking, what I said I thought you were going to do? Remember?
No.
We were talking, you were telling me about what your life has been like and what you were thinking.
Yeah, my plans, yeah.
Okay?
I'm definitely not going to say it.
Okay, but you told me what your plans were, well, and I told you that I knew, I had a feeling, I suspected. Remember?
You know, I certainly screwed it up, didn't I?
Well, never mind that. But if I suspected, he too suspected. That's what I'm trying to say. He didn't really focus
Well,
on it.
that's one thing I think I left this out. Did I tell you that I went to his Katona house while I was in Danbury?
I think I read that you did, but I don't remember if you told me.
You read somebody. I mean, I think I told these, you know, the Mike Kennedy types that I was driving around these places. I grew up, my family places. And
Oh, it was in the newspaper then.
yeah, but I really went. The next time we have a visiting day, I'll go over it with you.
I'd like to hear it, but...
I sort of left that out.
Okay, but I just want you to know that, remember what I told you I thought you were going to do? He knew it too. Keep that in mind.
I think that if he was concerned about that, he wouldn't have been treating me so bad.
I disagree.
What?
I don't agree with you. He's treating you
Because
pretty
he thought
bad.
I would screw it up like I did. Maybe he's right. I guess he is right then.
But
If
just
you're right,
remember that if I knew it, he knew it. That's my point.
That was a conversation about Douglas, correct?
I don't think so.
Really, Mr. Durst, it says, by the way, you talk about specifically mentioning, I left this out, did I tell you I went to his Katona house while I was in Danbury? That's your brother Douglas, correct?
Correct.
And you knew it was your brother Douglas when I asked you a moment ago, but you didn't realize that you had said the word Katona and that you were trapped, correct?
Not correct.
You went on, Mr. Durst. By the way, this is a discussion with your wife where you are basically saying to her that you had plans to kill Douglas, but you didn't think he knew about it or he would have been treating you more nicely, correct?
I had plans to kill myself, not Douglas.
So you were going to the Katona house to kill yourself.
I was driving around to the places I used to live and I used to play.
So,
And I started living in the Katona house with Kathy before Douglas and his bitchy wife, Susanna, arrived with their 2 children.
So,
And
Mr.
after 2 years,
motion to strike is
we bought
non-responsive
the
at this
South
point.
Salem house.
Yes. Mr. Durst, isn't it true that in fact, in this call with your wife, you are saying to her, the next time we have a visiting day, I'll go over it with you. I sort of left that out, and then you go on to say that I think if he was concerned about that, he wouldn't have been treating me so bad. How does that have to do with you committing suicide?
I don't know what I was saying.
Well, you were saying, Mr. Durst, that if, in fact, Douglas Durst knew you were going to kill him, he wouldn't have been treating you as badly as he was. That's what you meant, correct?
Objection argument is overruled.
I don't see how you can get from first announcing that if Douglas knew I was going to kill him, which I wasn't, he wouldn't have been treating me as badly. Seems if he knew I was going to kill him, he would treat me very badly.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that you then say that, in essence, you screwed it up like you did?
I was talking about killing myself.
Okay, you had a second call a week later on December 21st, 2001 at 8:05 p.m. RD 531.
People's 243.
From way back when, I was planning on Igoring DM.
Yes, I know.
So that was a big problem getting married. Because I was afraid that what happened to me just now, would happen back then.
Well, can I ask you, now that you brought that up, don't you think he knew how you felt?
I don't think he knew what I was, Igor.
Yeah, I think he did because I knew. So I think.
Oh no, he don't know me like that. Maybe now he suspects that maybe or something. I don't know. This is just so. I suspect he doesn't even suspect now.
You agree, Mr. Durst, that what you said was I was planning on Igoring not DM but BM, correct? That's what you said, correct?
No.
Please play the first RD 531, the first line.
From way back when, I was planning on Igoring DM.
Yes.
Stop
I know.
it. You said from way back when I was planning on Igoring BM, correct?
I don't know what Igoring means. And I don't know who BM is.
So this transcript says DM.
Yes.
But I think we all heard BM.
Correct, that's why, Your Honor, I'm saying the transcript is in error, and he is
Just
now...
to be clear.
Yes. Mr. Durst, so your position now is that you don't know what you meant by the word Igoring, correct?
Correct.
Isn't it true, Mr. Durst, that Igoring is a short term that you use? It refers to your dogs who have died, and it basically means that you were planning on killing BM, correct?
No.
And isn't it further true, Mr. Durst, that during this call, your wife says that if I knew about it, I think he knew, referring to Douglas, correct?
No.
So what does Igoring mean if it doesn't mean what I just said it does? What does it mean?
I don't think I said Igoring.
You don't think you said the word Igoring?
Correct.
Let's play it one more time. I want you to listen to it one more time, just the first line.
From way back when, I was planning on Igoring DM.
Mr. Durst, you agree, it's clear as day you said from way back when I was planning on Igoring BM, correct?
No.
What did you say then?
I don't know what I said.
Well, did you say the word Igoring?
No.
Did you say the word BM?
I heard B, I did not hear M.
And would you agree, Mr. Durst, that you are using the word Igor in another part of this clip where you say, I don't think he knew what I was, Igor? You're basically saying, correct, that your brother Douglas isn't going to know that you were actually going to be killing him. That's what that means, correct?
I don't think that says anything like that.
And your wife was responding, correct, Mr. Durst, that if she figured out that you were planning on killing him, that he figured it out too, correct?
I think my wife was saying that she had figured out that I was planning on killing myself.
So this is another conversation about suicide?
Yeah.
So when you say, so your wife says, you say, I don't think he knew what I was, you know, Igor. Are you referring to yourself by the pronoun he? Who is he?
I don't think it says what is written.
What, did you use the pronoun he or not?
Did I use the pronoun what?
He. It says, I don't think he knew what I was, you know, Igor. And then your wife responds, yeah, I think he did because I knew, so I think he knew. And then in the next line, oh no, he, don't know me like that. Maybe now, he suspects that maybe or something, I don't know. I suspect that he doesn't even suspect now. That's about 8 uses of the word pronoun he. Would you agree?
Correct.
Who is he, if not Douglas Durst?
Could have been anybody.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that it has been your thought that you have discussed that potentially at your trial that you might actually say that your brother or your father were involved in covering up Kathy's disappearance and death?
I never said my brother or my father was involved in covering up Kathy's disappearance.
Didn't you say, Mr. Durst, that depending on how things went at trial, that you might actually get up there and say falsely that your brother or your father was involved in helping you get rid of your wife?
Never said that.
Can you play the 10/21/15 jail call at 19:03?
It is being marked people's 335, 335A.
Anyway, so Lisa DiPaolo says she moved into Janine Piro's house.
I saw that.
She treated like a maid. And there's different opinions about whether or not Douglas helped me dispose of the body.
I understand.
I love it.
Yeah, the only thing I think, though, is that Douglas may be behind Lisa DiPaolo.
Well, then it's Janine Pirro who must think that Douglas is,
Oh, yes. Yes, she thinks that Douglas helped you.
Right. And I might decide to, depending how things go, to confirm her thoughts.
Mr. Durst, you were telling your wife that depending on how things go, you might confirm falsely what Janine Pirro allegedly thinks, that Douglas helped you get rid of Kathy. That's what you said to your wife, correct? On October 21st, 2015.
Correct.
Well, Mr. Durst, can you explain that? It's not Andrew Jarecki, correct? You're not talking to me to get a plea agreement. So please explain that clip. You're speechless, aren't you?
It doesn't make sense.
Objection.
I don't know how my trial, what trial we're talking about.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that that clip right there is basically a confession that you killed your wife and that depending on how things go, you might decide to take Douglas down with you. Isn't that what you were saying?
Objection 352, argument.
Overruled.
I think everything you just said is wrong.
Explain how it's
That
wrong.
is not a confession that I killed my wife.
Explain, Mr. Durst, how you can say, right, I might decide, depending on how things go, to confirm her thoughts that Douglas helped you get rid of Kathy's body.
I still don't see how that could possibly help me at trial.
No, Mr. Durst, the point is not that it'll help you at trial. The point is you're saying that depending on how things go, if things are going really bad, you're going to take your hated brother down with you, even though he wasn't involved, just to spite him and put him in the same murderous position you're in. That's what that means, correct?
What trial are we talking about?
This trial, Mr. Durst.
This trial.
This was a call from October 21st, 2015. Why don't you just tell us right now, get it out and just tell us what you did. This is your shot. Everyone's watching. The world's watching you. Here's your chance. Tell them what you did.
Argument.
Rephrase.
I thought this trial was about Susan Berman.
This trial, Mr. Durst, as you are aware, alleges a special circumstance of witness killing. That you killed Susan Berman because you killed your wife and she helped you cover it up. So my question to you again is, since you cannot explain what is, in essence, can be argued as a confession, Mr. Durst, why don't you just right now put the facade down and tell people what actually happened, why you did what you did?
I have repeatedly told people what happened and why I did what I did.
All right, I'll move on. Mr. Durst, you would agree that the first time there was any mention in public of Susan Berman having made any call to Einstein was in the February 2002 issue of Talk Magazine in an article titled "What Made Bobby Run" by Lisa DiPaolo. Is that correct?
I don't recall. I remember Talk Magazine. It was the last issue of Talk Magazine. And Lisa DiPaolo had half of it. I don't remember her bringing up that Susie Berman had said that she, Susie, had called Albert Einstein.
Isn't it true, Mr. Durst, that the article says as follows? Piro laughs at the notion of a grown woman calling up the dean of a medical school to say she was sick. Not that she thinks the dean was lying. He may well have gotten a call from someone that morning, but Piro believes the person on the phone may have been Susan Berman. It continues, but would Berman have made the phone call to the dean? Those who know her well believe that she would have done anything for Durst except to be an accessory to murder, at least a knowing one. One friend says that Berman admitted to her that she had provided...
Hold on. Hearsay. This is not an evidence, it's an objection.
Your Honor, can we approach and we can discuss this?
Sure. All right, come on. Great. Stand and stretch.
this question will be allowed, but it's for a limited purpose. The statement of someone like this obviously would be hearsay. The point is not that any of this is true. The point instead is the state of mind, the effect on the hearer, things that don't have to do with whether or not the statement is true or not. Doesn't matter. That's not the purpose. So you may ask the question with that limitation.
I'm going to read the second part again. But would Berman have made the phone call to the dean? Sure.
Yeah.
But would Berman have made the phone call to the dean? Those who know her well believe that she would have done anything for Durst except be an accessory to murder, at least a knowing one. One friend says Berman admitted to her that she had, quote, provided Bobby's alibi, unquote, but had done so innocently and not because she believed at the time that Bobby might have done something to Kathy. You are aware, Mr. Durst, that that's what this Talk magazine article said, correct?
I will take your word for it. I don't remember the article.
And Mr. Durst, the important question that I'm asking you is, do you agree that this article in February of 2002 is the first time that there was ever anything in print, on TV, in the media, that alleged that Susan Berman had made the call to the dean?
I cannot confirm that.
Well, are you aware, Mr. Durst, of anything having been in print, on television, publicized prior to this time?
In February of 2002, I was incarcerated in Pennsylvania. My access to the media was extremely limited.
You would agree, though, Mr. Durst, to answer my question, you are unaware of either at that time or since then ever being made aware that there was any allegation of Susan Berman having made that call prior to this article in February of 2002, correct?
I cannot go there. Kathy disappeared February 1st, 1982. And now we are talking about 2002. That's 20 years. During those 20 years, there were numerous magazine articles, half a dozen books, lots of TV shows. Someone could have brought that up.
Those are, everything you just described would be after February of 2002, correct, Mr. Durst?
No, I am saying that Kathy disappeared February 1982. And between 1982 and 2002, there were repeated articles in magazines, half a dozen books, and a bunch of TV shows. And any of them could have brought out that Bobby Durst's best friend could have made the call to Albert Einstein.
I'm not asking you what could have happened. I'm asking you, are you aware, Mr. Durst, of anything in the public domain prior to that Talk magazine article in February of 2002 that suggested that Susan Berman might have made the call? Are you aware?
I cannot point you to anything specific.
All right, I want to talk about Sarah Kaufman for a moment. Sarah Kaufman is Mella's brother, and Susan, for lack of a better term, kind of like her adopted son. Is that a fair description?
Yes,
You actually did not know Sarah prior to Susan's murder, is that correct?
I had met him. In terms of knowing him, I didn't know him, but I had met him.
You paid for him to come see you while you were in custody in Galveston awaiting trial, is that correct?
Correct.
And during the time that he came out, did you discuss with him anything about how the homicide had occurred with Morris Black?
Not that I recall. And but I can't imagine that I will discuss with this kid,
Mr. Durst,
who I did not know at all anything about Morris Black's death.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that when Sarah visited you on March 9, 2002, that you told him that you and Morris had been in an argument, that as a result, you had gone and retrieved a loaded firearm from another room and, quote, did it?
That is what you told me when you interviewed me in 2015.
Mr. Durst,
That is the only place I know of that story.
well, Mr. Durst, isn't it?
It's hard to hear him, and maybe that microphone can be adjusted, or maybe Mr. Durst can speak, make an effort to speak right into it.
I wonder if,
Try to speak right into that microphone if you can. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. But
is that, Mr. Durst, say something, let's see if that's better.
Your Honor, these microphones are a pain in the ass.
Can you turn this way, Mr. Durst, and say something again?
no, that was loud and clear.
Okay. Mr. Durst, isn't it true that you are aware, and you were given, Mr. Durst, a recorded statement that Sarah Kaufman made to Paul Coulter and Cody Cazalis on April 23rd, 2003, page 4, lines 5 through 18, which says the following. Kaufman says, and he seemed very lucid. He knew what he had done. Your Honor, I'm same issue, Your Honor, if...
I'm sorry. This.
Sure. May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes, please proceed.
Mr. Durst, Sarah Kaufman made the following statement on April 23rd, 2003 to Paul Coulter and Cody Cazalis from the Galveston Police Department. This is from page 4, lines 5 through 18. Kaufman, and he seemed very lucid. He knew what he had done. He said it had been an accident. It was like heat of the moment, and they had some argument. Now, he didn't tell me what, but something had happened where he went and got his loaded gun and did it. Cazalis says he said that they had gotten in an argument, that Kaufman, yeah, there was some, well, I shouldn't say specifically, I'm not quite verbatim, but that was like, the sense that I got was that some argument, some fight, some confrontation that took place in his apartment. Cazalis, Kaufman, that he then went into whatever other room, got his gun and did it, referring to you. Did you tell Sarah Kaufman this?
No.
Sarah Kaufman further stated at page 5, lines 20 through 24, Kaufman, somehow they ended up in the apartment. There was some heated interaction. Cazalis, Kaufman, whatever it was caused him, referring to you, Mr. Durst, to then go get his gun, and then he sat with the body for a while. Did you tell Sarah Kaufman this?
No.
Now, I want to be clear, Mr. Durst, I'm not asking whether it's true or why you said it, but I'm simply asking, are you sure that you didn't make this statement to Sarah Kaufman?
I did not make that statement to Sarah Kaufman.
If you had made the statement, would you tell us?
I would.
Mr. Durst, you would agree that if you made this statement to Sarah Kaufman, what the statement means is that the whole version of Morris Black pulling a gun on you would be false, correct? That's what that statement would mean.
If I made that statement, or any statement even vaguely like it, it would be a conflict with what I've said in the past. But I made no statement to Sarah Kaufman, anything even vaguely like that.
Mr. Durst, would you agree? One moment.
Also, in Galveston, they recorded us on his visit to me.
When you testified in Galveston, Mr. Durst, did you have certain goals? Actual goals?
My goal was to get acquitted.
Isn't it true that everything you testified to in your direct examination in Galveston was directed at certain goals that you had? Being acquitted, correct?
I don't know about everything.
Isn't it true that one of those themes was to demonize the liberal New York media in front of a more conservative Texas jury?
I don't think the Texas jury was that conservative. Galveston is not a conservative place.
Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Dirk, that another of your tactics was to focus on Jeanine Pirro as an aggressive female New York prosecutor out to prosecute you at all costs, correct?
We said many, many worse things about Jeanine Pirro.
And Mr. Durst, isn't it true that in essence, your plan was to turn Jeanine Pirro into some kind of mythical character irrespective of the actual facts, correct?
The only way that we could attack Jeanine Pirro was based on what Jeanine Pirro did and said.
Isn't it true, Mr. Durst, that you took liberty with how directly she was involved in the case?
I don't know what you mean, they took liberty.
Isn't it true, Mr. Durst, that it was Joe Becerra who was actually doing the reinvestigation and that you created this mythical, aggressive female prosecutor who was on TV every day and in the papers talking about you?
Jeanine Pirro took Joe Becerra off of the case. Now, Joe Becerra would not say that the reason Jeanine Pirro took him off the case was because Joe Becerra was getting all this media coverage. But I don't mind saying it.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that you spent a lot of time practicing for your testimony in Galveston?
Well, I spent more time practicing my testimony in Galveston than I have here.
In fact, you made tapes of yourself, which you had Stuart Altman deliver to your wife to see if she thought you sounded believable, correct?
I went over my testimony with my lawyer, Stuart Altman, and he decided to make a tape and to play it for Debbie.
SA 004 122801 2021 jail call with the defendant and his wife.
Exhibit? Can you exhibit 337?
337.
337A.
337A, and then we'll conclude.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, 336.
336 and 336A.
Well, did you get the thing from Stewart? Yes, I forgot.
So you're gonna listen to it?
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I hit it.
Okay, don't hit it too high. You wanna listen to it.
No, but I'm afraid of it.
And you have something to play it with?
Yeah, I bought it.
Okay.
I did everything. Oh,
Okay.
you know what? I brought it home. Oh, you
What?
I think I brought it home. Oh,
You brought it to the city?
bought something and then I left it in the city, I think. All right, I think I really did that. All right, let me look around.
Well, you can wait until next week. And also they cost, what, $30 or something?
Yeah, I went, I bought a nice one.
They're all, anyway, so a nice one's 50?
Yeah, no big.
All right.
But I mean, I went and did that already. Now I can't believe I left it.
Your Honor, may I play one more clip? It's short on the same subject. These were tapes of you practicing your testimony, correct, Mr. Durst?
Correct.
SA 005-1902. This is an 825 jail call between Mr. Durst and his wife.
This will be 337. 337A.
Thank you.
You know the stuff you're sending to Stewart?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more. It sounds A+. Do I sound 100% believable?
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
believe me?
Yes.
And the tone of my voice sounds sincere, and
Yes.
that's what I want to know about, those type of things. That's why I'm doing it. Do I sound like someone who's describing this situation?
Yes.
Well, only you and Stewart, you know, can I do this with? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But don't you see how important that is to me for me to know that?
Yeah, but I think that
It's a risk, but leaving out the risk, don't you think it's good for me to know that you and Stewart say, yes, you sound the way you should sound? Don't you think that helps me?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We'll resume tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have a shortened lunch. There'll be a 1-hour lunch break so that we can recoup some of the time that we are losing because we are ending early at 2:45 tomorrow. So return tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
I had something to put on the record as well.
So Mr. Lewin, the jurors have left. You wanted to put something on the record?
Yeah, okay, come along. Yeah, I stand.
Oh, Mr. Chestnut, please, for return. Mr. Lewin wanted to address an issue.
Yes, Your Honor, obviously, Mr. Durst was confronted with a statement which on a good faith basis. This is a taped statement that's been handed over in discovery to Sarah Cobb. I now have two choices. I can either live with the defendant's answer, or I can go with my preferred option, which is to briefly call Sarah Kaufman in rebuttal. Obviously, I previously told the court that the only witness that I would be calling would be Mr. Jarecki. I did not believe, honestly, that having a taped statement that Mr. Durst would say, I never said that. So, Your Honor, I am willing, if the defense wants to stipulate that, in fact, Sarah Kaufman would come in and would say that, yes, in fact, he made this taped statement to detectives, I can do that. But otherwise, I believe, especially since the defense is making a big issue of the fact that this isn't true, that I need to briefly call him in rebuttal.
Okay.
I wanted to put that on the record.
We don't have any idea why you put that on the record, no.
Yes, thank you. Okay, anything else?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Department 1 is adjourned.